Carl Cox is an icon. They call him the three-deck wizard because he came up in the UK rave scene, mixing on 3 turntables at the same time for his entire set. He held down Space Ibiza for 16 years. The man is 50 years into DJing and still selling out arenas. And Carl Cox is something that genuinely terrifies me. He never plans a set and somehow plays for 5, 6, even 9 hours. Meanwhile, I get nervous if my next 3 tracks are not emotionally available to me. So after my James Hype video, when a bunch of you told me, politely or not, to stop melting my brain with DJ gymnastics and to go try mixing like Carl Cox, I did. I'm Lavonda Rocks, and in this video, I'll show you the 3 things I learned that actually make Carl Cox the big Cox. No, they make him Carl Cox. I'm going to try each of these out in a live set, and we will find out whether a DJ style born in a 90s warehouse might secretly be the smartest way to DJ in 2026. So I started this experiment the way I start all deeply serious DJ research. With a beer, my journal, and way too many browser tabs open. I mean, I knew who Carl Cox was, of course, but I needed to understand what actually makes him such a legendary DJ. Not just the big smile, not just the 3 decks and the general aura of I could fix a rave with 1 fader. So after countless hours watching interviews, reading articles, and listening to his sets, I found the first lesson I had to test. And unfortunately, it was the one that has confused me for most of my DJ career. Just read the room. Those 3 words strike fear into the hearts of all beginner that's actually 4 words. You see, I'm already falling apart. Everyone says it, no one explains it. Just read the room. What are we supposed to be looking for? A head nod? A foot tap? The guy in the corner suddenly realizing his knees bend? And how are you supposed to react in real time when you're new and you're just trying not to die up there? But not only does Carl Cox read the room masterfully, he never even builds a set list. He walks in with a bunch of music and chooses on the spot based on what the place is actually doing. He's the master at room reading, which is basically the opposite of what I learned with James Hype a few weeks ago.
It's an art form about reading the room. I always kind of DJ to the people that are not moving, that are not taking the kind of interest in the room until you find that pivotal track and they're moving, and then that moves the whole room. And that's what I always kind of play towards. If everyone starts having a good time, my job's already been done.
Great, but that still doesn't answer the question. What does read the room actually mean? So I went digging through interviews and I finally found Carl Cox breaking it down.
I have to tell you, I've never ever planned a set, not once. So what I normally do, if I'm going to do a set, I made a selection of 100 records in the tractor as a set. So it's like 8 record boxes I made when I choose my set. And in that set, something has to happen. If I can't make a good set out of 100 records for that night, and then I might as well basically work in a fish and chip shop.
Is he mocking me? I think I get it. Except here's the problem for me. Carl Cox is looking at actual humans, and most of the time, I'm staring at a chat box trying to figure out if fire emote, skull emote, fire emote means they love it or I've ruined their evening. But for this experiment, I was lucky enough to have an IRL gig where I could test this on actual humans and on an actual dance floor. And instead of stacking banger after banger like every instinct told me to, I tried to let the music and the crowd ebb and flow. I backed off when it felt right. I let the energy dip without panicking and immediately trying to refill it. I watched who was moving, who was not, and what happened when I changed direction. I mean, I accidentally made googly eyes at someone because I was trying to read her. It was genuinely difficult, but I tried to channel my inner Cox, and you know what? It worked. They danced, they partied, and I actually had way more fun just letting go. So what I learned from this first lesson is this. You don't rise to the level of your perfect little playlist. You crash directly into the level of your music library and how well you know it. But here's the thing. This skill, like so many other parts of DJing, is an art, and it takes time to cultivate. So if you're a beginner DJ and read the room still does not completely make sense, don't beat yourself up. You've got to play for hours in all kinds of situations to really figure this out. Even Carl Cox spent years practicing. And this brings me to the second lesson I learned from researching. And it's what I like to call, there's trouble in threes. Three-deck mixing is a technique Carl Cox is actually famous for. And yes, I know this is already a lot of decks and Cox talk, so just stay with me. Back in the day, he was basically remixing other people's record live with 3 turntables while everyone else was sweating through mixing with 2. And I was relieved to know that while he is pretty much a god at this point in his career, it wasn't always that way.
You know, most people would turn up to see me do 3 turntable mixing and literally standing in front of the turntables to see me mess it up.
I scoured interviews and watched him mixing, trying to figure out how to do this. From what I could see, he would get 2 tracks locked in. He'd use the EQs to carve out some space so the frequencies weren't clashing, and then he would cue up the 3rd track, beat match it, and use the volume faders to cut in and out while all 3 tracks were playing. I realized very quickly that I was going to need to really concentrate because I am very much one of the DJs still sweating through 2 decks. And also, no, I do not have 3 turntables to fully emulate this. I just barely got my first one. So thank you in advance for liking and subscribing because apparently this channel is now funding my midlife DJ equipment crisis. Anyway, I used my live stream to practice this technique because my chat and my mods are so very supportive and forgiving. I had my 2 decks locked in. I felt good. I felt powerful. I felt like maybe I was becoming a wizard. And then I reached for the vinyl as my 3rd deck. And what came out was not a remix. It was like 3 songs entering a custody battle. And as always, I'm going to post the entire set on my 2nd YouTube channel for you to watch, and hopefully you won't be too hard on me. But just know, everything was clashing. The low ends were fighting, some vocals were stepping on each other. But eventually, after enough public failure, I was able to pull it together, and when I did, it was magical. I actually got lost in it. I think this is what the gurus call flow state. And for 1 whole minute, I was one with the music. I was swept away, lost inside the sound and becoming one with my throuple of tracks. All 3 of them at once, and I gotta say, this is exactly why I love DJing. I love DJing. This is gonna be a fun one to edit. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Carl Cox's setup has changed a lot over the years. He went from 3 turntables to CDJs and tractor running through a mixer, to a full live rig with modular synths, an analog drum machine, and Ableton Push. At this point, he's not just mixing finished tracks anymore, he's building them live. And that is a part that I am obsessed with. 3-deck mixing is really about layering. It's about adding something new without destroying what's already working. So I tried the modern baby version of this with my Machine MK3, which I have mostly used for unhinged samples. But this time, I wanted to try to build something live. So in my live stream, I used the same idea as before. I looped sections from the first 2 tracks. I carved out space with the EQs. And then I went in with a special kit that I made called Big Cox. What? It was so fun. And again, I got to use this whole other part of my brain to make and play music for whoever was listening. I would build it up with extra snares and effects and then break it back down using my Big Cox kit. And this leads us to the 3rd lesson I got from researching Carl Cox. Manage the journey by being genre fluid. In his interviews, he makes it pretty clear that he does not stay locked into one genre all night. Techno, house, funk, soul, disco. He's like this magical groovy tour guide, giving the listener what they didn't know they need. So basically, Carl Cox is not genre loyal, he's dance floor loyal. And honestly, that is just rude because I have spent years organizing my music like a stressed out genre librarian. But the real lesson is not just play different genres. The real lesson is knowing how to shape the night. His whole performance philosophy seems built around this exchange between the DJ and the crowd. You put energy out, they feed energy back, you react to that, and then they react to you. So that's just the same thing from lesson 1, just stretched across the entire night. And this is where I realized another one of my problems. I'd learned to organize music by what it is, Genre, BPM, key, tech house, bass house, house, sad house, probably a haunted house. But Carl Cox made me think I need to organize more about what the track does. So if I had to explain this to a newer DJ, I would say start small, pick a smaller batch of tracks, tag them by energy and mood. Energy could just be a number from 1 to 5. How big does the track feel? And then mood is like the emotional flavor. Is it dark or uplifting or groovy or sexy? Whatever actually fits, you name it. Because when you're standing there and you need to come down a notch, you don't want to scroll through 900 tracks labeled techno and pray that your ancestors are going to send help. So I tried this during my set, and I chose songs based on mood and energy instead of staying glued to my usual tech house and bass house comfort zone. And it was freeing. I played different styles and genres and acapellas and little left turns I probably wouldn't have taken if I was only thinking by category. I tried to think of the set like a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this kind of set needs time. It needs space to unfold, which is probably why Carl Cox is known for his marathon sets. There was a comment on my James Hype video that said, he was great for about 90 minutes, and then I wanted to leave, but Carl Cox plays for 5 hours and people wish he had gone 8. And I want to point out something here because it's easy to turn this into a Carl Cox is right and James Hype is wrong. He's not wrong. They're both amazing DJs. They're just different. James Hype is built for the peak, big, immediate, unmistakable energy, the kind that works in a 60-minute festival slot. That's what he does. Carl Cox is built for the arc, the long game, or the slow build. It's like the kind of set that asks you to trust him for hours instead of seconds. And neither one is automatically the better DJ, but I will let you guys fight about that in the comments. So what did I actually learn from trying to mix like Carl Cox? Well, not that I need 3 decks, and not that planning is bad, and definitely not that I should be trusted with a sequencer unsupervised. I learned that great DJing is not just about what track comes next, it's about knowing why that track comes next. Carl Cox can improvise because he knows his music, he knows his crowd, and he knows how to manage the journey. And that's the part I want to steal. And honestly, this is what keeps humbling me about DJing. Every time I think I'm starting to understand this craft, I find another layer that makes me go, oh, I am very much still in school. But I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful that you are here letting me learn in public, letting me mess things up and figure things out, and hopefully becoming a better DJ, one experiment at a time. And if Carl Cox is the master of the long arc, James Hype is basically the opposite. Fast and technical and explosive and built for the peak. So if you've not seen me try to survive that, go watch the next video.